we are not content with what we have. I think there is a saying, I think it's an English poem or something like that. I wanted a shoe. I think you know that. I wanted a new shoe. He already had a torn shoe, but I wanted a shoe, a new shoe, until I saw a person with no legs. So that type of saying, in a way, it implies we are not content with what we have. The person who has no legs, when you compare yourself to him, then of course you have your legs and you still have something to wear on. Then that shows a way of how you can be content. So contentment is very important. One of the things that, because of we are not satisfied enough, we want more and more. That's why we work more and more and more. I'm not saying that you should not work. Of course you should work. But you must think of you must be content. Do you get what I mean? You must be content with what you have, not be dissatisfied with what you have. That's one of the things. We must, in this modern world, we are so stuck in money making, or so stuck in the process of wanting more and making money, that we forget why are we making the money for. So we must strike a balance between that. We must be content, also make money. So that there must be a type of balance. We must be content with that, in a layperson's term. So that's one type of suffering that we have. Also, we may think our friends and colleagues gives us happiness. Our friends give us happiness. We share the happiest moments between them. But friends, even though they are friends, later, through the uncertainty of samsara, that friends may become your enemies. Like if you have an argument, you two may become enemies. So that's the one, what do we call it? The suffering of uncertainty. There's no certain that you will remain friends for life. We may say best friends forever, but we are not sure. We are uncertain. We can't be certain. So that's one of the suffering. Also, we have the suffering of thinking too much about the future. Thinking too much about the future. Thinking, let's say, what will happen? What will happen if I do this? What will happen when I reach this? Even when you have not contracted a disease, you may be thinking, what if I contract this disease? You are thinking too much into the future, and we have the suffering of thinking too much into the future. And we also have suffering of being separated from our loved ones, which is also an uncertainty of samsara. So we have countless number of sufferings. Even though we may not think, we usually think of suffering as a physical suffering. When we experience something, if you burn your hand, at that time we say we suffer. But when you are at rest, when you are not suffering from physical, we say, I'm not suffering. So is it really that you are not suffering, or are you really suffering? That's the question we must ask. So if you are more practiced, if you know more about dharma, or if you want to know more about it, you can read in Rinpoche's treatise of the, what's that called? Lamrim? Yeah, Lamrim Chenmo. I don't know the exact term of, do you know? Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. The great treatise on the path of enlightenment. In that, he has highlighted many things like the 6 sufferings, 8 sufferings of our samsaric cycle. So these are the sufferings that we usually face. The suffering of being separated from loved ones, the suffering of thinking too much, and thinking about, also, this may also be called a suffering. You thinking of suffering, which is causing you suffering. So that is also a type of suffering. But as I told you before, you must think of, there is certainty that you are suffering, but you must not think of suffering. If you think of it as a fact of life, then you would be able to not be depressed about thinking of suffering. So that's one thing.